Hi, everybody. This is Brian Park, a professor for the course on strategic management. I really hope you stay well, and this is my first online lecture for chapter 7 and 9. Please be noted that you don't have to read all the sub chapters for chapter 7 and 9. I specify which part you should read for the second midterm, as you can see here. Before I dive into today's session, I'd like to recap on what we learned from the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we discussed and learned about diversification, and I introduced 5 different types of diversifications. Please remember and be familiar with the numbers and description for each type of diversification. And we also studied identity gap, which is one of the most important constructs for diversification. The main implication of this construct is if a company goes into a new industry whose identity is very different from the identity of the firm, that could be problematic because customers and other types of stakeholders will experience identity gap. So any diversification that increases identity gap could be problematic, and that's why unrelated diversification is not that ideal from this perspective. That is why we have such inverted U-shaped relationship between the level of diversification and a firm's performance. So let's dive into today's session. Today's session is all about how a firm can diversify its business. While the previous lecture has focused more on the benefits and the risk of diversification, today's session is more concerned about the way of diversification. You decide to go into a new market, then the next question would be how? How can I go there? This session would help you to answer this question. Assuming that you're a firm A in market A and you are interested in going into market B, how can you go into market B? It could be a simple or complicated question depending on your resources and capabilities. Well, if you have great resources and capabilities, the answer is very simple. You can go into market B on your own. You don't need any external help from outside. You can make use of your existing resources. This is a very simple approach. However, if you do not have any resources or capabilities for new market, I mean market B here, then you might consider having some relationship or collaboration with another firm called Firm B by making some partnerships, and it is simply called borrow. There are different types of borrow, and I will let you know more details about the style of borrow. And the last option would be buying a company in a new market. If you have a lot of cash, if you have a lot of money, you can buy one company new market and you can naturally go into the new market without any prior knowledge or any constraint. It is called buy, and buy means here in our context mergers and acquisitions. And if you combine all 3 different options, I mean build, borrow, and buy, we can have this wonderful model called build, borrow, buy model. Please be noted that this model is not covered by our textbook. This model is really useful when you decide or determine the way of diversification. Which one is better? Should I go into new market on my own, or should I use strategic alliances or mergers and acquisitions? This model can tell you which way works best under your condition, and I will give you more details about this model later. So let's apply the build, borrow, buy model into this company, Uber. Uber recently went into a new market called electric scooter, and Uber didn't use any external help or support from outside. Why not? Because Uber has great resources and capabilities already. And electric scooters are not expensive and it is not complicated market at all. Uber has its own resources and customer network. All they have to do is adding some customers information into their app that enables customers to move between Uber and Jump, which is a new company name for the electric scooter market. So it's not that difficult, and Uber can use their existing resources for this new market. That's why Uber used the build strategy, not borrow or buy. But this market is a little different. Autonomous vehicle market. Uber is absolutely interested in this market, but not only Uber, but also other companies do not have any clear understanding of what this market would look like in the future. Uber does not have any knowledge. Uber does not have sufficient technology for for this market, and that's why Uber is actively involved in having some relationship and maintaining some partnerships with auto companies as well as IT companies. And for this case, Uber bought one company for Middle East market. Instead of using strategic alliances or partnership option, Uber just bought this company. Why? First of all, this company is not that expensive from the Uber's perspective. And importantly, Uber was not so sure whether they could have really long-term trust with this company. So, to reduce all types of uncertainty coming from alliances, Uber took very easy and expedient strategy called mergers and acquisitions. So they used buy option for this new market. So let's go back to this model, build, borrow, buy model. If you're not so sure how you can go into a new market, this model would tell you which one works best for you. So let's go to the first question. Do you have enough resources? Do you have relevant internal resources or capabilities for a new market? If the answer is yes, then why don't you go there on your own, like Uber did for the electric scooter market? You don't need to have some help from outsiders because it's going to be really big liabilities in the future. So instead of taking risk from outside, you can use your existing resources and you can go into a new market with your power, and it is called build option. If the first question's answer is yes, then your option would be build according to this model. But what if you don't have enough resources or capabilities for a new market? Then you might consider having some partnership with another organization. If you can borrow some resources from the market, you might consider having a short-term contract or licensing with another organization. But if it's not available, if it's impossible for you to borrow some resources from the market, then you might consider more trust-based relationship called equity-based alliances or joint venture. Many companies actually collaborate together to develop internal capabilities together um, in the form of equity alliances or joint ventures. And the last option would be buy option. If you do not have any resources, if you are not able to borrow resources from the market or from your partner organization, you may consider buying a company. The very first condition for the buy option is that you should know the quality, the real quality or the value of the target company that you're interested in. If you do not know your target company well, but buy it without any serious consideration or calculation, that could be a big problem in the future after you buy a company, and this is related to the risk of mergers and acquisitions. So let's summarize the build, borrow, buy model. According to this model, the build option might be the best strategy if you have great resources. It's the least risky strategy. But you might consider taking the build option, I mean having some relationship or alliances with partner organizations, as long as you're sure that your partner organization would create some value for you. And the last option is buy. If you do not have any capabilities or resources, if you do not have any good partner organization, and if you do know the real quality of the target company, then you might consider buying a company. But again, mergers and acquisitions have a lot of risk. I will tell you more details about the benefit and the risk of mergers and acquisitions. Anyway, this is the core message of build, borrow, buy model.